Should you take Jalen Hurts in fantasy football this year? How about A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert? We'll talk about that next with Jamie Lynch on the PHLY Eagles Show. Good afternoon and welcome to a Thursday edition of the PHLY Eagles Show. I'm Zach Berman here with Jamie Lynch, and we are talking fantasy football. And I need to say, Jamie, I'm a little nervous for this one, not because I'm trying to win fantasy football leagues this year, but also because for like the past decade plus, I've been on a number of shows with you. I've been your guest on radio.
Yes.
I've been your guest on here in the PHLY Eagles Show, but I've never been in this seat with you. So I'm trying to kind of live up to all that it takes to be on the show with Jamie. It's good having you here.
Well, the thing about me is, Zach, I'm about as unserious a person as there is. So please feel no pressure. It's kind of like when Bo and I flip-flopped. I was hosting a show, and Bo was the secondary seat after an Eagles season where Bo was the host, and I was the secondary seat while you were at the games. So I understand where you're coming from, but please, no pressure.
No, because actually one thing that people say about me is you should be more serious sometimes. They're like, you're not serious enough.
We're a good yin and yang here.
Yes. Well, so I'm on the way to work this morning, 7:12 a.m., and I get an email from ESPN, okay? And it was like this great day to do it because the email at 7:12 says the subject is getting fantasy football fever yet.
Hell yeah.
So I don't know if there was like one of those things where they hear what you're talking about, they see your search engines, and you get the email. But it's because we are talking fantasy football today, and so there's a few different ways we're going to go with this. We'll be Eagles centric for about half the show here, looking at the Eagles players in fantasy football. We'll do some would you rather's. Basically, would you take say a Jalen Hurts or this quarterback? So I'm curious your thoughts on that. But then we'll also go league-wide to get you ready for your drafts, for your auctions, and we'll do the top guys, the sleepers, the busts, the breakout players. So it's going to be fun there. But before we get into it, let's just get kind of the rules of engagement. Are you more of a draft guy or an auction guy? And you said to me before, is this going to be PPR? What's your preferred scoring system?
I have never done the auctions myself because most of the leagues I'm in are 15 to 20 plus year old leagues.
Okay.
College buddies, high school buddies,
so it's grandfathered into the draft.
Yeah, so we're kind of
pun
grandfathered
intended,
in.
yeah.
Some are keepers, some are not keepers. I've never actually done the auctions, although I hear people love the auction draft. So I don't have much experience there with them. We're, again, grandfathered into kind of the pre-PPR standard type of thing. So we're mostly half-point leagues. But I feel like everybody does PPR like as the standard now. So that's kind of like my background. Although I will say on the top of my LinkedIn resume, I did go 17-0 once in a fantasy football season, start to finish. And you know what two players I have to thank for that?
Who's that?
Brian Westbrook.
Okay, so we're talking.
And Braylon Edwards.
Nice. All right. So,
I got Braylon Edwards late on his bust-out year where he had like 15 touchdowns. And I saw him recently at an event, and I was like, do I tell him? Do I thank him for that season?
He probably appreciates that.
He probably would have. I never ended up doing it just because I don't like bothering these guys. But yeah, I do have that on the top of my LinkedIn profile. 17-0, start to finish.
How does that go over on LinkedIn?
A lot of all the experts are coming to me. Matthew Berry, Eric Carabell, they're hitting me up like, dude, you did it. I'm like, I know.
I once did a story on Brian Westbrook about it was the 10-year anniversary or maybe the 15-year anniversary of him kneeling at the end zone.
Oh man!
And a big premise of the story was like how many fantasy football leagues that screwed up because I think the time of year.
I think I've read this.
I think the time of year was like around the playoffs, and
it was.
So,
I want to say it was like week 15 or 14. Like,
I mean, Brian's always awesome, but he was particularly helpful for that because like you call one of the great Eagles players up, and you're like, I want to interview you about this one time that you screwed over fantasy football owners. But he was really cool.
Yeah,
about
Brian's
that.
the best.
So speaking about Brian Westbrook adjacent here, the Eagles added Saquon Barkley this offseason. We know that. And we were kind of talking in the office before about how the Eagles have had these top of league players in fantasy at quarterback, obviously wide receiver. But Saquon, that's probably a good place to start here. This is going to be a big question, not just how Saquon is going to do, but is he an elite fantasy football running back this year? What's your Saquon position?
The Eagles are a kind of a fascinating fantasy dissection here because there's only one football to go around and they have supreme talent all over the place. Saquon, my assumption is, and I had this last year with DeAndre Swift where I thought they were going to work him into the passing game more. I think it's more of a given with Saquon that it'll happen than especially with Kellen Moore coming in here, which is another new wrinkle in this whole fantasy kind of discussion. I do think he's a viable top 5-6 running back for sure. Running back's a weird position when it comes to fantasy football, and they didn't pay him what they paid him to not use him as a 3-down back. To have him, he's a good blitz picker-upper. Yeah. There's basically no reason for him to leave the field unless it's workload management. So I do think they're going to work him into the passing game a bunch, which should be a new wrinkle in this offense. And, I think he started to get healthy again towards the end of last season, and you saw some flashes of old Saquon. So, I think he's right around kind of like, 4 to 6, depending on your league, depending on what you believe. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun for Kellen Moore, and I'm sure Jalen Hurts is extremely excited to have him in the backfield with him.
Yeah, a few follow-ups there. First off, in kind of talking to people around the Eagles, during the spring, you hit it on the head. They view Saquon as like a 300 touch player, like 275, 300 touch player. He's not going to leave the field. They're not bringing Saquon in to conserve him. They're not worried about what Saquon's like 4 years from now, right? This is essentially a 2-year contract, and I think they are going to give Saquon. They are hoping Saquon has the New York, the Philly. I don't want to say renaissance, but like
reinvigoration.
Yes, similar to what Christian McCaffrey did when he went from Carolina to San Francisco. Is that you put him with better talent, you put him with a better offensive line, you put him in a better scheme. I think that's the expectation for Saquon, and I think it's a realistic expectation. I frankly think the only obstacle for Saquon from a fantasy perspective would be health, right?
Sure.
And you can't necessarily predict a player getting hurt. But from a usage perspective, there's every reason to be optimistic about it. And I actually think from like purely fantasy, top 5, top 3 running back is reasonable because I think that there's not going to be the same type of timeshare in Philly that say you're going to find in like Miami, for instance, or Detroit, for instance, right? So you might see Jamar Gibbs and we'll get to this later, in that range where Saquon is. But Gibbs is someone who he's splitting time with David Montgomery in the backfield. Yeah. Saquon's not going to be splitting time in the backfield. But you also mentioned kind of the scoring component of it, and this brings Jalen Hurts into discussion here. And we'll get to Jalen, but I am curious, do you think Saquon's going to have the type of goal line effectiveness that you want from a top running back, or do you think this is still Jalen's place?
I mean, it's hard to think they're going to just fork it all over to Saquon because Jalen has not gotten hurt doing this.
Sure.
So they have 2.5 years of evidence of this being an injury-free play for Jalen. And I think that's the only reason you would kind of go away from it, right? Is if you saw like an uptick in quarterback injuries on sneaks. You haven't seen that. So I don't think there's any reason they're going to take it away or stop doing it. The Kellen Moore aspect probably comes in here because it is going to be a new offense. How much Nick holds on to and gives up is going to be interesting to find out. They said it's pretty new in training camp or the OTAs. I think Saquon will get some of it.
Sure.
Like if you had a 100% pie chart of Jalen Hurts, touches inside the 2, I would think Saquon maybe steals 30% of that. maybe 35, something like that. I'm just kind of guessing. But I think Jalen's still going to be a touchdown monster when it comes to fantasy football.
I recall back in March, Saquon was on the Kelsey's podcast.
You asked him about it.
You might have heard about this podcast. I'm not sure if anyone. Trying to give them some pub because they don't get a lot of attention.
They need the Kelsey brothers.
But actually, Jason Kelsey's advice to Saquon was, don't get tackled at the 1 yard line, and because that happened a little too often with DeAndre Swift last year, where he would get pulled down at the 1 yard line, and then Jalen would vulture his touchdown. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Obviously, not having Kelsey in there, having Kellen Moore if they do adjust from the tush push. But we mentioned Jalen Hurts. This seems to be one of the big questions with Jalen this year is there's the football conversation with Jalen, but then there's the fantasy one.
Sure, and they're two different conversations.
Exactly. So purely fantasy, where do you view Jalen among the quarterbacks?
I do have some real life skepticism a little bit. When it comes to fantasy football, I think he's pretty much a constant. Mm-hmm. I think there's much less fear when it comes to fantasy football, Jalen, than there is making all of his progressions and proper reads and, distributing the ball somewhat evenly with a bunch of prima donnas here. I think real life Jalen is much harder than fantasy Jalen. So I think fantasy football wise, I think you have to go out of your way to make a case he's not a top 5 quarterback. You could probably make the case he's as low as 6th or 7th. But, I think you kind of have to go out of your way to do that. So I think Jalen Hurts is going to be, at the end of the year, a top 5 fantasy quarterback, more or less regardless of falling off a cliff.
What type of running exposure do you think he's going to have this year?
It was weird because last year, maybe the knee was bothering him more than they let on or people knew.
He had a deep bone bruise that I think was affecting him. Yeah,
and I think it affected him. So you should have a healthier Jalen Hurts this year. One of the things last year with Brian Johnson they seemed to get away from a little bit more was the true RPO or PRO, whatever you want to call it.
RPR,
with him. So it'll be interesting to see if they bring that back. Part of the hard part in breaking down the Eagles fantasy-wise is Kellen Moore is – a much different beast. Brian Johnson probably was over his head a little bit last year and probably drowned a little bit. I think that's the safer alternative to saying it was all on Jalen. So now Kellen Moore gets thrown in the mix, and there's going to be more pre-snap motion. And how much is the RPO, PRO a part of this offense? So, there's still some unknown things. But I think at the end of the day, Jalen's going to be a fantasy monster.
Even in Jalen's best years, he hasn't been like a 4,000-yard quarterback. He hasn't been a 30-touchdown quarterback, passing the ball, that is, of course. Do you think that with Kellen Moore, you're going to see a little bit more of what Dak Prescott was with the Cowboys, where he sees some of those prolific passing numbers?
Yeah, I mean, with Kellen Moore, you're going to get a lot more pre-snap motion, a lot more creativity and the route trees and all that. And, when you have a guy like Devontae Smith with some of the best footwork and speed in the game, you got to utilize that. And you got to scheme guys open a little bit better and try to make his job a little bit easier in making those reads. So, I do think he's going to have a little bit of an uptick in terms of passing yards this year. Than he did last year, obviously. So I think that's going to go up. I do.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. I am curious to see the running dynamic. I've said this. I've been consistent with it. If Jalen's your quarterback, you sign up for the full Jalen Hurts experience. That includes running the ball.
Absolutely.
Right? So
why would you not use it?
Exactly. Now, Kellen Moore, Dak Prescott could move. Justin Herbert can move decently, but that hasn't necessarily been the staple in the Kellen Moore offense. I think Kellen Moore will adapt for that, but I'm expecting Jalen to have one of his more prolific passing seasons this year. I think 4,000 yards is a realistic benchmark for him. He was 3,858 last year.
Yes,
obviously
I say 4 is realistic.
Yeah, started all 17 games. So obviously injuries are the questions here. But I thought last year in particular what hurt Jalen, what plagued Jalen was the turnover percentage, right? He threw interceptions, at a 2.8% rate, 15 interceptions last season. I'm expecting that number to go down this year. I think that's going to be a major point of emphasis. Obviously, there's some variability when it comes to it, but he has weapons all over the place. And you mentioned Saquon Barkley as a receiver. We've fallen for it before, like you mentioned, with DeAndre Swift last year. But I'm expecting there to be some more gimme completions this year than there's been in the past.
Well, escape routes for Jalen when you're under pressure. And, look, there's no Jason Kelsey here now. So we'll see interior pressure, how the pocket is affected this year. But I think having those escape, dump off valves with Saquon is like an extreme luxury to have. And you said it earlier, that San Francisco game, I wish we could get like some truth serum and Howie and watching that game, because
I would love some truth serum and Howie. Yeah. That's like that. That gets me excited.
Because there's no doubt in my mind, Brock Purdy, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I think he's a competent NFL player, all that. But like watching that game and seeing what Christian McCaffrey does for Brock Purdy,
sure,
you had to think the wheels started going in motion there. Because, I mean, you said it, like the comps are there. Saquon and Christian McCaffrey, new environments, different offenses, different quarterbacks, all that stuff. I wonder if Howie went, okay, if we can get Jalen something close to that, I wonder what the possibilities are. So I wonder how much that San Francisco kind of beatdown you took really affected how he thought about this offseason.
That's a good point. To kind of circle back to that too, to tie into the decision to add Saquon, I think one thing that the Eagles looked at was yards after contact, right?
Sure.
Because I think they view themselves as having one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. So they're less interested, I think, in like the yards before contact, because that's often created by the O-line, by the scheme, and they're more curious to see what you can create. And I think they think Saquon can create. Jalen Hurts, to his credit, like that's one thing he does. He can create yards himself. So I'm curious to see how that works itself out.
It's definitely one of the. I mean, I think we kind of talked about it before the show. You have some interesting things to watch in camp this year, where in the past 2 years, it's kind of more or less been locked in.
Sure.
Everything's more or less been known. Brian Johnson a little bit last year, but you just kind of assumed he was going to continue on with the vision and the plan there. Now it's something entirely new. You're throwing Saquon in the backfield with Jalen, their ability to not only run but pass together. I mean, if you're Kellen Moore, this is kind of like heaven, right?
Absolutely.
You can scheme up whatever you want. You have top-end talent all over this offense.
Yeah, that's the appeal to the job, and it's kind of been my talking point on Kellen Moore, that I think one way or the other, he's not here next year, because if they're really good, he's a head coach, and if they're not good, then there's a new guy coming in to try to maximize this talent.
Yeah, and at least you have Vic on the other side, who looks like he's pretty locked into his retirement phase of his career, and he wants to be close to the Phillies and all that.
Yeah, so, he'll be drinking at the Palladium. You can see him over there.
Yeah, I saw John Kruk was at the I think he's going to the Palladium this Friday, actually, for fried bologna sandwiches and a little hang. So
I hope probably see Vic Fangio there. Yeah.
Maybe Vic and John will be together.
I want to get to you about the wide receivers. Before we do that, though, I want to tell everyone about our friends at Miller Lite, because a lot has changed over the years. One thing that has not is the great taste of Miller Lite. Another thing that is not is that it's less filling. So what is the best thing about the original light beer? Miller Lite sparked this debate in 1975, and we still haven't settled it. And it's not just that it's less filling. It's not just that it tastes great, but you think about all the great times that you have enjoying a Miller Lite, maybe on a Friday at the Palladium, maybe Friday night watching the ball game, and then catching the PHLY Phillies post-game show thereafter. Maybe it's golfing this weekend at the PHLY golf tournament. Maybe it's watching it's watching Joel Embiid on the U.S. team. Wherever you're doing it, you can have that ice cold Miller Lite with you, because Miller Lite keeps it simple, undebatable quality, great taste, only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. You don't have to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLYBirds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces, fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
Yeah, and after those Miller Lights, you can head over to the Bet Park Sportsbook, or you could just download the app right there in your hand. It is the sports book that we care about and we use, because it's the local sports book based right here. They employ people in the area. They're invested in the area. So why not use the local company? Get in the zone with the Bet Park Sportsbook app. Money is in the moments. Let's see. We got the Olympics coming up. You got football future bets you can make. Of course, there's MLB action every night. Trey Turner, maybe moving up that MVP ladder. You want to take a look at some baseball futures, Cy Young props, Olympic bets. Bet Parks has got you covered. You want to get some action in on the Europa Finals or maybe the Copa Cup? Well, BetParks has got you covered. You can win big with all-day action. Win your first $10 bet and earn $125 in sports bonus bets. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet with BetParks. Download the app and play along. Must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Speaking of the Euros, I was watching that I had that game on yesterday afternoon. I looked up and for that England goal. Did you see that?
Yeah, in the 90th minute.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good game. I love international soccer events, like when it's country on country. Like that's just good stuff.
And seeing like the despair on the face of the Netherlands fans, you like it means so much. You feel for them. You don't
It's different over there. Did you see the footage of the Netherlands fans assaulting the England fans at a pub before the match? Oh man. They were throwing chairs and bottles, and the soccer hooligans were going nuts.
Tough day for the Dutch.
Yeah. And then down in Charlotte, did you see what happened there?
I saw that, too.
The Malice at the Palace in Charlotte, part 2. My God.
Yeah,
I forgot to talk to JP about that. That was wild. Uruguay and Colombia.
It gives us something to look forward to in 2026, right? So let's shift now to the wide receivers. And this is interesting because the Eagles have 2 legit top of the league wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But it might play out better in real life than it does in fantasy. What's your read on them?
It's hard to be better, right?
Sure.
I feel like both guys are kind of capped out a little bit here, which is not a bad thing. I mean, their numbers are great. Saquon, or not Saquon. AJ is going to be, probably in that top 7 wide receiver group. And then you look at a guy like Devontae, he's probably going to be in that top 20 group, top 22, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they have 2 elite wide receivers. The one guy I do think maybe could emerge a little bit more is Devontae, because I think Kellen Moore is really kind of drooling about his usage and his footwork and his ability to get open. So I think Skinny Batman maybe could go up a little bit to like that 1,200, 1,300 yard and throw a little more yards in there. Touchdowns, I feel like he's kind of in that 7 to 10 range, whereas AJ touchdown-wise is probably going to be more in that like 11 to 13 type of range. Sure. But I think AJ yard-wise is kind of tapped out. Like last year, through 7 or 8 weeks, he was basically the best.
Exactly. He had that football. That run of games with 150-plus yards.
I mean, that was insane.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you improve on that? So, it's not a bad thing, but I think both guys are pretty, like, constant in their spot amongst league receivers.
Yeah, well said. What I guess would concern me from a fantasy perspective is these guys have been remarkably healthy during the past 2 years, right? I mean, Devontae, the only game that he missed was week 18, game 17 last year. A.J. Brown got injured in that week 18 game, missed the playoffs, but has otherwise played every regular season game for the Eagles.
Yeah.
And so when you see that does lend you to think that if there's any type of injury variance, the numbers would go down. But I don't think there's anything from a performance perspective that would lead me to think of regression. No. Certainly you add Saquon in there. I think what you're hoping for with both players is that the pie grows, right? The offense is better this year because their usage rate is not necessarily going to go up. The other thing you hope is that maybe there's some more touchdown luck, right? That there's fewer plays stopped at the 1 yard line, that they're a little more effective with passing touchdowns, and that AJ.
That's where their numbers could grow touchdown wise for sure.
But I am with you. I don't want to say AJ's hit his ceiling, but I don't think AJ's gonna be like a 2,000 yard receiver, right?
No, so there's too much talent on the offense for him to do that.
But I think Devontae Smith is good enough, and if the opportunity's there, which I imagine it will be, can be in that like 1,250 to 1,400 range. Certainly is, he does everything that you want. So I think there's probably a little more room for growth. But from Devontae, but I look at AJ as just like, all right, you draft him or you bid on him in the auction, and you're getting rock solid production this season.
Yeah. So speaking of auctions, are you an auction guy yourself?
I am an auction guy. I love auctions. Although I have a love-hate relationship with auctions.
Isn't that all of fantasy football?
Yeah, well, because I do this thing every year in every auction. I do auctions in football, basketball, and baseball.
Wow.
And I do a lot of preparation, and I have like evaluation for players, right? Okay. And then we are like doing the auction, and then someone will bid like $1 more than what I had or $2, and then I'm like, all right, I'm out. And then all of a sudden, it's like,
why didn't I not?
It's an hour and a half into the auction. I have the most money of anybody. Like this year in baseball, I spent $14 on Victor Scott, right? I'm like, I just had so much money to throw around later in the auction. I took the opposite approach in my basketball auction, which was like, all right, I'm just going to identify 2 guys. I think it was like Luka and Karl Anthony Towns, and I'm just going to throw my money at them and then go $1 players elsewhere. And that didn't necessarily work so well. So I've had sometimes where I'm good as is finding like the right $1 player, the right $3 player, but I need to do better with my like big spending because sometimes I end up with too much money in the middle of it, which is what you don't want.
Sure, which is where you're going to waste money on guys that don't really deserve it. So AJ in an auction league is going to go, like probably in that 4 to 6 range in terms of most expensive?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And it obviously depends on if you're in a league with contracts, if you're in a league with if you're in a league with keepers. But AJ, I think, is like a no doubt top 6 wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can pencil him in. It's a really talented top 5 group.
Sure.
I mean, when you talk about like edging out, like I don't know, a Justin Jefferson or a Tyreek Hill or like some of the it's an incredibly talented list. But I do agree, like you can pretty much pencil him in as a top 5 guy.
Save that for the would you rather, which we'll get to in about 5 minutes. Because before we get to that, I want to ask you about Dallas Goedert, because
the most fascinating one of all.
Yeah, and Bo and I did something a few weeks ago where I said, "Is Dallas Goedert a top 10 tight end?" Because it's kind of been one of those default expressions that I've had. Oh, the Eagles have a top 10 tight end, and then I looked at all fantasy football rankings at that point, which isn't like a tell-all,
sure,
but it kind of gives you a sense of their receiving projections.
I was reading something on PFF earlier, not that PFF is the Bible, but it said tight end is the most fantasy football tied to talent.
Interesting. Okay,
that they thought positionally, like usually the cream rises to the top, and if somebody's talented, they're going to be
well said.
So I was like, that's an interesting way to look at it.
So he's generally viewed in like that 11 range, which surprised me because I thought he'd be closer to 5 than closer to 11.
Sure.
So what's your view of Dallas Goedert, and in particular, what kind of season are you expecting from him?
Well, I think with Dallas Goedert, you have to view him under the prism of he's probably going to miss 3 to 4 games. His track record in his career the last 3 seasons is 14, 12, 14 in terms of games started. So he usually has something. So you do have to take that into consideration a little bit. He's a tough one because I think the talent is there. The yak is there. The big play ability is there. He's a great blocker. He's a really good tight end to have on your team. But fantasy-wise, it really hasn't translated the way we thought it was going to translate. When this guy, his first couple of years, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a perennial top 5 tight end. And it hasn't really been that. The touchdowns are just average, like his last 3 years, 3, 3, 4. Like his talent level should equate to more touchdowns. I don't know if that's how they're using him in the red zone. I feel like when Dallas gets a touchdown, it's because of his own doing.
Sure.
In a way, I feel like he's rarely targeted down there. Maybe because they push so much. So like the yardage is never eye-popping. His career high is 830, which is really solid. I'm not trying to take, but then you look at last year, barely 600. Year before that, 700. So he's probably safe to pencil in that 650-ish, 700 yards a year range. You'd like to see more touchdowns though. I haven't deep dove Kellen Moore enough to look at his tight end touchdown kind of rates over the years. I mean, you'd like to see Dallas Goedert at least get 5+ touchdowns to feel good about drafting him, as that top 7 or 8 guy.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like I've said this about Dallas. I think those who watch and listen to the show every day might think that I'm down on Goddard this year, and it's kind of interesting because it's not that I'm down on him. I've thought very highly of him for the past 5-6 years, but you kind of get to a point sometimes where you say, all right, is this the player that he is?
It is what it is, yeah.
Right? And so maybe he's not going to be your 65 to 80 catch tight end. Maybe he's not going to be your 900 to 1100 yard tight end.
Sure.
And perhaps part of it is the weapons around him. But
I do think that plays a pretty big factor.
But I think that if you get him the ball and he can be so effective. The Eagles had this staple play that they used to run in 2022 when everything was working, that once they would get like to past midfield, they would run this tight end screen, and you'd see Dallas with yards after the catch. Yeah, and he's so hard to bring down. He gets ahead of steam. I think they should find more ways to manufacture touches for him, because I do think he's better than the 11th tight end in the league. But at some point, you kind of are what your numbers say you are.
Yeah, and I was kind of shocked too when we were doing our prep work out there. I went to the ESPN rankings, and they take like their 6 or 7 experts, and they median them out to their ranking. And Dallas Goedert, it's rare to see somebody universally
exactly
the same position from all 6 guys. And Dallas Goedert straight across the board, 11 as the 11th overall tight end.
I think Jake Ferguson's family put those rankings together.
And we kind of started discussing it like prior to the show. Like, man, 11. Yeah. Like, that does feel a little disrespectful, but then you dive into it and it's like, okay, 3 touchdowns.
Sure.
You're going up against some guys in this league like a Dalton Kincaid, a Travis Kelce, who are going to be in that 10-plus range. Mark Andrews is a favorite of Lamar Jackson. So other offenses, skew tight end heavier come red zone or close to the goal line situations than the Eagles do. So that's the reality, I think. And I think to expect anything more is on you, the owner, as drafting him at this point.
Last question before the would you rathers is, are you staying away from everyone else on this offense? Your Paris Campbell, Will Shipley, Kenny Gainwell, Johnny Wilson, Anaya Smith, if kind of there's rookie values in your league.
I have zero interest in anyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in a real deep keeper league, maybe you take a shot on Johnny Wilson as a guy they can develop with size. Like, I have little interest outside of a keeper league in drafting any of these guys. I think we talked about it with Saquon. He's a 3-down back.
Yeah.
Like, he's here to be on the field every possession. There's no reason to take that guy off with his blocking ability.
Are you handcuffing Saquon?
It's probably not a bad idea.
Or do you think if he goes down, it's kind of this committee backfield?
I think it's a committee backfield because, I think it was you that says you think Shipley's got a shot.
I think Shipley both thinks Gainwell, yeah.
Yeah, and Gainwell, it's like, again, he kind of is what he is at this point. Like, this is his 3rd year. Usually you have a pretty good idea entering year 3 what somebody is. Occasionally a guy can surprise you. It's usually fair to give a guy 3 years, but I think we know what Kenny Gainwell is, and I don't think they're going to be rushing to get him on the field when you have a guy like Saquon there. So
there's this fact that Bo loves, which is in the or since 2008, Will Shipley's the 3rd highest drafted running back that the Eagles have had after LaShawn McCoy and Miles Sanders. So that goes to show you the investment that they have in him.
Yeah,
I'm trying to do all these little Easter eggs that if Bo's listening wherever he is in the world, he gets like irrationally angry, and then his wife turns to him and says, "We're on vacation. Why are you mad?"
It's our anniversary. What are you doing?
Zach cited this Will Shipley stat that I can't stand. Yes.
It is kind of weird to think about that, though. That is strange. You would think they have an idea for a role in the offense when you draft somebody that highly. But fantasy-wise, now I have Paris Campbell. I've made the mistake of claiming him off of waivers in years past. Like, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, I'm not expecting anything.
Could be the year. You never know. Right?
This is the one.
So this next game is Would You Rather with the principal guys we've spoken about, Jalen, Saquon, AJ, Devontae, Dallas Goedert. And the premise of this is you're on the clock, okay? You're taking a player at this position. These are the guys you're considering. Which way are you going? So go with the scoring system that you favor.
Okay.
We're doing this draft format. You're not saying what receivers are on the board. You're deciding between these 2 guys. Who are you going with? Let's start with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen?
Josh Allen. I think I have, concerns, but I think Josh Allen is pretty much, and he did lose Diggs, which is a big loss for him. And it's funny, like the fantasy real life conversation, I do think real life Josh Allen is somewhat overrated while being excellent.
Yeah.
I just think there's a little too much praise his way. Fantasy wise, he's a monster. So I would go with Josh Allen.
Jalen Hurts or CJ Stroud?
Now, I have a bias here with C.J. Stroud because I hit gold with him in my keeper league.
There you go.
I have C.J. Stroud as a 14th round keeper in my.
That's money right there.
Yeah, like I am
found
sitting
money.
pretty. So I am high on C.J. Stroud. He's probably right on the heels of Jalen. I would take See, I would take C.J. Stroud personally, but I think as a universal grade, Jalen Hurts is still slightly ahead.
Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson?
Lamar Jackson.
Easy one for you?
Yeah, he's just a fan. Like when you played Lamar Jackson in fantasy, whatever weekend that falls on, you go, shit.
Yeah.
I got to play Lamar Jackson. This is a game. And like
He could just have one of those huge games. Yeah.
He's 2 to 3 times a year going to put up a 45-plus point performance. He's got the wheels. He's got weapons on offense. Yeah, I'm going Lamar Jackson.
Let's go with the running back categories here. 3 with Saquon. Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor?
Ooh, Jonathan Taylor. They're right there. This is probably where I would let my Eagles bias influence me. I'd probably go Saquon.
Okay.
But I think that's a coin flip decision.
Just because you're watching the Eagles games anyway, so you want, you want a minute. Yeah, Saquon Barkley or Jamar Gibbs?
That's another tough one. I would probably go Saquon. If it's a keeper, I guess keeper leagues could influence it. I would go Saquon.
Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry?
Saquon Barkley.
Saquon, easily. You're not worried about the touchdown vulturing. You're not worried.
Well, he might have the same thing down there. Derrick Henry now. I would go. I just think all those miles on Derrick Henry's tires. There's got to be a little bit of a reason why Tennessee, outside of just money, moved on from him. So I would go Saquon.
They just love Calvin Ridley there. So
yeah.
All right, A.J. Brown. Let's go with A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase.
See, Jamar's my guy. I love Jamar Chase. I would go Jamar Chase because I believe in Burrow's arm impacting him more than Jalen's arm impacting A.J.
A.J. Brown or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
That is damn close.
I guess the scoring system matters here because Amon-Ra St. Brown's getting a lot of receptions.
PPR machine, where AJ probably has more touchdowns. I would probably lean, as the answer on this show, I'll say St. Brown, but in real life, I'm probably, for the same reason, if I have a shot at A.J. Brown versus somebody comparable, I'm going to pick the guy I'm watching every week. And
then A.J. Brown or Puka Nacua?
A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown, okay, because I've seen Puka kind of work his way up some of those rankings.
Sure, I think I've seen him as high as 7th in some. And to me, the hardest part about sports greatness, everybody can be great for a little bit, is repeating it.
Sure.
So there is a risk factor with Puka there that he has to run it back and repeat success, which I think is tough. He'll probably do it, but if I have a sure thing versus a guy that hasn't proven it for a second year yet, I'm going sure thing.
Let's go with Devontae Smith here. Devontae Smith or his old college friend, Jalen Waddle?
Oof, I would go Waddle.
Because?
I just think more touchdowns.
Okay.
I mean, him and Tyree. It's fascinating because they're both in elite wide receiver rooms, two of the best in the league. I just think Waddle has more yardage.
Devontae Smith or Brandon Ayuk?
Devontae. They're huge on Ayuk out there. I think those two are right in the same range, pre-20, in between 15 and 20. There, I would go Hurts over Purdy. I do that a lot with the wide receivers. Is the quarterback a lot of times is my deciding factor.
Are you expecting Ayuk in San Francisco this year?
From the things he's been saying this offseason, no.
Must be in Washington, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but San Francisco. What's the latest on that? It's just kind of a state of flux,
haven't paid
right?
him. Yeah,
so he wants out.
He wants to get paid. I don't blame him.
That's another thing, too. Depending on when your draft is, those are things you have to consider. Because if he ends up with Jalen Daniels in D.C. or something, it's okay, now he's with a rookie quarterback. How does that affect it?
Devontae Smith or Nico Collins, 2 guys who got paid this offseason.
Ooh. I probably would go Nico.
Interesting. Okay, because your C.J. Stroud love?
Probably a little bit of my C.J. Stroud love bias there.
They got Diggs there this year, so.
Yeah, that is an interesting wrinkle in it. I would probably go Collins. He was pretty dynamic last year.
And then last one here with Dallas Goedert, these 3. Dallas Goedert or George Kittle?
Kittle.
Okay. Dallas Goedert or David Njoku in Cleveland?
That's close. I would probably slightly lean Njoku because I believe he can be a 5+ touchdown guy.
And then Dallas Goedert against Jake Ferguson in Dallas.
I'm going Dallas.
You're going Dallas.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dallas.
You're going the actual Dallas.
Yeah,
not the player
Dallas over the
in
player
Dallas.
from Dallas. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that's probably just Eagles bias. Like that's a coin flip kind of. They're like right there, neck and neck.
Sure.
But Dak has shown probably more aptness to go to a tight end than Jalen has.
You're right. That's a good.
You
point.
know, so
Yeah.
like that. Those are things you have to consider in the red zone. Dallas uses their tight end a lot down there, whereas the Eagles don't.
We will get to Dallas and the rest of the league in a minute here, but before we do, I want to tell everyone about TrueMark Financial Credit Union because we like talking about home equity line of credit, and the home equity line of credit allows homeowners to borrow against home equity with a variable interest rate. You can preserve your savings and get access to funds as needed for big renovations, education expenses, or emergencies. And then you can also save for limited edition merchandise. That's another great thing from TrueMark. You can use their budgeting tools to save for special purchases like limited edition merchandise. Regular contributions accumulate over time to reach saving goals effectively. Transferring as little as $5 a week gives you $260, more than enough for a Kelly Green jersey or perhaps a buy-in for a high-stakes fantasy football league. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit truemark.com/PHLY.
And let me tell you a little bit about what we got going on here at PHLY. I think we've assembled the best staff of writers in this entire city, with Zach and Bo holding down the Eagles, Les Bowen contributing to that. You got Charlie Connor and Alex Appleyard breaking down hockey like nobody else is. Of course, you got the Cap God, Derek Bodner, and Kyle Newbeck bringing you Sixers coverage that nobody else is. And, of course, we got Jim Salisbury and John Foley on the Phillies. So with your diehard membership here at PHLY, you get access to all of their, I'll say it right next to the guy, I hope he blushes, elite writing. You get discounts to events in the future. You get an invite to our Discord channel, which I have way too much fun with. You get a free piece of merch when you sign up, 20% off events, all sorts of great things. So consider supporting us here at PHLY. You get a ton of great benefits, and we'd love to have you a part of the team here at what we're building, and it's becoming one of the best sports communities on the web right here at PHLY. So head to all PHLY and consider becoming a diehard today.
So we've in these past 42 minutes, we've been Eagle centric. Let's broaden that lens here, and look at the entire league from a fantasy perspective. We're going to go through quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. We're going to look at our top guy at the position,
all right,
the sleeper at the position, the breakout position, and then or like the bust or the stay away player from that position.
All right.
We'll start at a quarterback. Who's your top guy at quarterback? If you could have anyone in the league, who would it be?
It's hard. It's always weird to me to not say Patrick Mahomes, just because if you have a chance to get Patrick Mahomes on your fantasy team, so it's always weird to not say that, and I'm about to do that.
Really?
I really considered Lamar heavily for the number one, but I think I'm gonna play it safe with Josh Allen.
Okay.
I know the Diggs loss is a big one.
Sure.
Hopefully, Keon Coleman is competent.
Yeah. As good on the field as he is off the field, right?
Yeah, I'll just go Josh Allen. I feel like it's safe. I was real tempted by Lamar and Patrick Mahomes, but I'll go with Josh. How about you?
I certainly can't argue with Josh Allen because of the running stats there.
Sure.
To me, it's like if you're going to make that type of investment, I want a sure thing. And I know Patrick Mahomes, like no matter who his wide receivers are, no matter who's in, who's out, he's just consistent every week. So I'm going Patrick Mahomes, but I was debating Josh Allen here as well.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is, I think, the safest pick in fantasy sports. Like, you're pretty much getting consistency every week, and he's on the cusp of that huge game every week.
Who's your breakout pick at quarterback?
My breakout quarterback is Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, I like that. I
think he's still 24 years old, which is kind of wild. You know, your brain doesn't even fully develop until age 25 with your frontal lobe.
Yep.
So
that's a good fact right there.
Yeah, he doesn't even have full brain development yet, Zach. But wait till he unlocks that beast under those curls.
No better way to use it too.
You know, he's kind of that middle of the pack quarterback that I think can take that jump into the top 10. He's got a great tight end. He's got a great running back. We'll see what his weapons end up becoming, but they do have the kid who I like this year, Brian Thomas, coming out as a rookie, pairing that with Christian Kirk, who had a solid year with him last year. And Gabe Davis he's not going to light the world on fire, but he's kind of reliable. So I think he's got some decent weapons there. So I'm going to go with old locks, Trevor Lawrence, to be my bust-out guy that can maybe scrape like that 9 to 11 range at the end of the year.
So you and I were talking about what constitutes breakout, and I say this guy emerges into a top 10 player. So I hope that this qualifies because I'm going with a rookie here.
Sure.
And that's Caleb Williams.
All right.
I love the player. And then I look at the weapons that he has with DJ Moore.
He's got weapons,
with Keenan Allen, with Roma Dunze. And I think, they might be playing from behind in games. I can see Caleb Williams having the type of statistical year that puts him among the top 10 quarterbacks in the league.
It's going to be a fun one to watch. Chicago finally has a quarterback. He's an interesting one because 2 years ago, watching him in college, I was like, number one pick. This kid's all that. And then I watched him a bunch last year, and it was very just meh. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to chalk that up to a weird year at USC or whatever, but very interested to watch him this year.
And who's your stay away? The guy who might be getting more hype or getting drafted or bid on higher than you would?
He's a stay away from me because I don't believe he plays full seasons, and it's Kyler Murray.
Oh, okay.
He'll probably give you some monster games, and he's got potential, and I understand why people are enthralled with the running and the arm. To me, it's just it's just unsafe. With him, I feel like there's risk involved. There's points where through 9 weeks of the season, he's the NFL MVP, and then he falls off a cliff or he gets hurt. And I just feel like there's too many variables there for me to consider drafting him as a top 10 guy.
I went out of order. I should have gone sleeper first, so we'll get to Kyler in a bit. That's a little tease. My stay away is Justin Herbert, and there's nothing to do with the talent that I think he has.
Lack of weapons.
Yeah, and I imagine, I love Jim Harbaugh as a coach, but I think they're going to run the ball quite a bit. They've invested in that offensive line. He doesn't really have great receiver weapons. We'll see how Johnston develops.
Sure. He was brutal last year.
Yeah, they're going to be tight end centric. So there's just guys I would prefer to have over Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. It was interesting looking at the rankings. Herbert was right there sandwiched in between Caleb Williams and Jalen Daniels. So, the pros that do the fantasy stuff for a living kind of agree with you.
Your sleeper pick?
My sleeper pick, it's not a name that's a sleeper, but I feel like week in, week out with his wide receiver room, he puts up points. And I don't love his game per se, but Tua Tagovailoa.
Okay.
To me, he's kind of projected in that 17-ish range amongst quarterbacks. I feel like there's more potential there point-wise in fantasy football than 17th.
I can't argue there.
Yeah, when you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, that's going to help you. So I guess it's a sleep. His name's not a sleeper, but projection-wise, he's kind of sleeperish.
Yeah, my sleeper is Kyler Murray, and I hear what you're saying, but for the exact reason you mentioned, there are times when he looks like the NFL MVP, and I think there's when I think of sleeper, I think he's sleeping on people in that he was hurt for a good chunk of last year, wasn't completely healthy. I think he's in the second year in that offense. I thought that offense showed some promise, significant upgrade at wide receiver with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that Kyler Murray's kind of being forgotten about as one of the top fantasy quarterbacks because he can run the ball well. I think he's going to sling it more than he did last year. I would pay attention to Kyler Murray this year.
Yeah, and he's got a big new toy and a hometown kid there in Marvin Harrison Jr., so that should be fun. Do you think he can crack the top 5?
I don't think top 5, but I think top 10 is not out of the question for him.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's move over to running backs here. I think the top guy is fairly obvious, but who's your top guy?
This is just running back to me is the hardest position in fantasy football. Christian McCaffrey, top guy. I'm not going to overthink this one and how San Fran uses them. Christian McCaffrey. I
am with you there. You might be worried about is the usage rate going to catch up to him? I just think the way he plays with the offense that he has there, I don't think the drop off is coming right now, and I just think he's just too good, and that offense is too good. So that's an easy one. Who's your breakout running back?
The breakout I have as Rachaad White down in Tampa Bay.
Interesting.
I think he's a guy that can get into that, upper echelon of running backs. I think most people have him, I want to say in the mid-teens. So when I do like the breakout, I'm always thinking of the guy that can get into the top
Sure.
10. So I usually look, 10 or later. He's 13th, as low as 15th from the ESPN guys. I think he's a guy that's going to get some opportunities to be a top 10 running back, and I think he can do it.
Okay, I'm curious how Bucky Irving is there with it, but as long as he holds off Bucky Irving, that's his job.
You're
for
big
sure.
on Bucky?
I like Bucky coming out, and I don't love Rashad White as much.
Okay.
My breakout, you could say he broke out last year, but I think he's going to be even better this year, and that is Devon Achane. And I think
he had some monster games last year.
His yards per touch was best in the league last year. He needs to stay healthy, but entering kind of year 2 here, they can kind of find new ways to scheme him up. I just think he's too dynamic. There's too much space in that offense. If he plays 14, 15 games, I think he's a top 5, top 10 overall player in fantasy football. So I'm high on Achane. I'm going to have him in just about every league that I can get my hands on, because I think he's that good.
Do any of your league mates watch the show?
Yeah, so
you better stop revealing secrets
the
there,
thing
Zach.
is that I had him as a rookie last year, and so I'm protecting him in my league. I'm pretty safe
Okay.
there. Otherwise, I don't know if I would be dishonest, but maybe I would like float someone out there that I don't want. It's like in the auctions when you bid on someone just to get the bidding up on somebody else.
Chess, not checkers, Zach.
There you go.
But what's his name? Mozart doesn't give you any concern there with him?
No, Mostert, his numbers last year, he was a big time he was a big time touchdown guy, right?
Yeah.
He went up to the most touchdowns of a running back over 30 since John Riggins. But
wow, that's a good little fun fact there.
Yeah. And they did pay him a bit this offseason. They took Jalen Wright in the 3rd round, so or in a middle round there.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a thought that ball might be split around too much. I think that Achane's just too talented, so I am I am all in on.
You might be
on
swaying
Devon.
me some. I hope nobody in my leagues are watching.
Who is your sleeper running back?
Sleeper running back I have is Zamir White.
Yeah, I like that.
You like that?
The opportunities there for sure.
Yeah. So we're on the basically, did okay in the second half of last season when given some opportunities out there in Las Vegas. I think the talent is. When you're a Georgia running back, the talent's there.
Yeah.
And it's just like opportunity. It's kind of like Kentucky guards in basketball.
Sure.
Like sometimes the backup ends up being better in the pros than the starters at Kentucky.
So he's like Maxey now.
Yeah, basically
Okay.
he's Tyrese Maxey. So I'm going to go with him as in that category.
I like that. I don't see anyone else kind of taking the carries away.
That's the
from
thing.
him.
He's kind of like insulated in protection.
Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing there 2 years ago. That's a good one there. I'm going to go with Rico Dowdle. This is a deep sleeper.
Ooh, this is real deep.
But I look at the Dallas offense and I say, all right, they haven't done anything at the position
44th
other than
on ESPN. Look at Zach going deep for the bust out.
They haven't brought. They did not draft Jonathan Brooks, I think, which they wanted to do. They didn't draft it back. They brought back Zeke Elliott, but this is one of those things where you can follow the money. They didn't give Zeke Elliott this huge financial commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zeke kind of leads the team early on. But Rico Dowdle is someone who he's entering year 4 now. They've kept him around as an undrafted rookie. He's someone that they gave him more opportunities a year ago, and I think someone needs to emerge in that Cowboys backfield. That offense is too good. I don't think it's going to be Deuce Vaughn. I don't think it's going to be Royce Freeman. Maybe they add a back here during via trade, via waiver wire. But as it stands now, if there's one back I think could be better than expected in Dallas, I'm going with Rico.
All right, that is a deep sleeper.
And then your
My avoid?
your bust, yeah.
Ramondre Stevenson in New England.
Okay.
I never trust a New England running back. They'll give you a couple week period, and I know it's post Belichick now, and it's different than it used to be. But I still just don't trust them. I feel like every year for the past 2 years, people are like, "Oh, Stevenson's gonna be the guy." Again, just kind of trust what he is, and he's that 15 to 25 range, which to me are like a dime a dozen. So I wouldn't put any hopes in Stevenson being like a guy that's going to carry your team.
I guess that makes sense to me. They just paid him, but I don't like that offense overall. So you're kind of staying away from that group.
Yeah.
I'm going with Isaiah Pacheco.
It's not a bad one,
because I just think that there's too much inconsistency with like who's the back there. They brought back CEH. I just think that on a week to week basis, I don't love like the idea that, all right, this is their back. Andy Reid likes to mix and match. So I'm kind of avoiding Pacheco right now.
He is 8th across the
exactly.
ESPN. So yeah, I mean that's an interesting one.
Let's move on to wide receiver. Who's your clear top guy, or is there a clear top guy?
It's CeeDee Lamb, but I don't know how clear that is. I mean, when you look at this top 5, you can make the case, I think, for everybody but maybe St. Brown.
Sure.
Like I don't think St. Brown's ever going to be like the number 1, but you never know. Jamar Chase with Burrow back, like what could he do? Tyreek Hill is just a freak of nature. But I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb as the top guy.
Certainly the volume's there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going with Jamar Chase. I think this is the year that Jamar Chase he moves up from like 3 to 5 to number 1. The T. Higgins thing is Higgins is the clear second guy. They didn't give T. Higgins a long-term deal. You get Burrow back. I think they're just going to air out to Jamar Chase as much as they can.
I love Jamar Chase.
I like all the wide receivers that you mentioned there, but if I had to go one, I would go Chase because of the quarterback and because of the opportunity.
I love Burrow and I love Chase, so you don't have to sway me. I could very, very well see that happening.
Your breakout wide receiver.
Breakout wide receiver. I mean, I guess it's a breakout. I viewed breakout as somebody that can get into the top 10. I went with Nico Collins.
Okay.
Again, this might be part of my CJ Stroud bias and love. But Nico Collins was a guy that really emerged on the scene well last year. He's 16th on the poll from ESPN and all their experts. I think he's a guy that can get up there into the top 10, maybe possibly into that Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Chris Olave kind of range. So he's going to be the guy I'm going to go with. I'm going to roll with Nico Collins.
Okay.
As a top 10 bust out,
Yeah, I'm going Marvin Harrison Jr.
Ooh, like it.
Yeah, and
Zach is high on the Cardinals.
I'm high. Well, I'm high on Marvin. Yeah, it's Jonathan Gannon, right? So when you got the best coach in the league, coach.
Oh, wait, so is this where I have to draw in the universe of Bo?
If we have to relitigate the Super Bowl and the defense, we got to do that. No, Marvin Harrison Jr. The talent is out of this world.
Sure.
And he's like the clear number 1 guy there. I think he has, unlike some quarterbacks drafted in the top 5, or early in the draft, like Neighbors. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has a high level quarterback.
I saw Neighbors throwing around thousands of dollars in the club last night online. I was like,
he's having fun there.
Yeah.
I think
maybe do that after you're proven.
I think he's a high level quarterback throwing him the ball. He is so good.
Yeah.
And they're going to be behind in games. They're going to be throwing the ball. I can see Marvin Harrison Jr. having the type of rookie year impact that some of the great rookie receivers have had.
Sure. How high would you be willing to go in your league?
I think he's top 10.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think he's top 10.
In your auction valuation?
Well, because I protect rookies, so he'll be even higher. I don't want to kind of give that too much away out because no one has him yet, right? So actually, I shouldn't say, you know what, you should really go with the guy I'm avoiding.
But if Puka Nacua is there and Marvin Harrison is there, you're going
I'm going Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah. And same for a Garrett Wilson or...
Not Garrett Wilson. Okay. I love Garrett Wilson this year, but I'm going with him over Puka.
Devontae Adams or...
That's a good one. I'm probably going with Devontae Adams, but I don't love the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
With Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell.
I love Chris Olave, but again, the quarterback situation. Yeah. So are you going Olave or are you going Harrison?
I'm going Marvin Harrison Jr.
Wow.
Yep.
Zach is big on Marv.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
I saw him play in high school, so I have an affinity to it. I root for all the local kids, much like you. Kind of nerd
He's from
out.
that way.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he went to the prep, but what are you going to do?
Which is that way. Yeah.
He actually, the worst part of it all, Zach, he went to LaSalle his freshman year.
And then he
transferred. We lost him.
Yeah, you need better NIL. Who's your avoid?
My avoid is Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
Sometimes injuries affect guys more than other guys, and still a talented receiver. I just don't know if he's top 25 worthy in the wide receiver room. I think he's a guy that could take a little bit of a step back, especially with Puka. And I know they coexisted for 8 weeks last year. I don't know if I want to spend high capital on Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I am with you there. I was considering him and Devontae Adams as
Devontae gives me a little concern too because of the quarterback situation.
But the player I think might be worse than kind of where he's being drafted is Deebo Samuel. And I say that now if
he is 18th on the ESPN list.
If Ayuk is not there, then obviously that raises him. But if they work something out with Ayuk and they just draft Ricky Pearsall, and I think Deebo, like he'll have some weeks where he has these few weeks, but I am just not. I'm not as invested in Deebo this year as I've been in past years.
Yeah, I get that, and the way they use him too. Like he does rush the ball. Like there's things that take away from his true wide receiver abilities. All right, so it is time for the sleeper, right?
The sleeper, yeah.
All right, I am going with a guy I love. I love his quarterback. I loved him since he came out of BC. He gave me a lot to go with last year. I'm going Zay Flowers. I love the kid. He's ESPN has him ranked 24th amongst their analysts. I think he's a guy that can get into that 11 to 15 range, probably maybe sniff right outside the top 10. So I'm going to go with Zay Flowers with the bust-out rookie sophomore season.
I like that. He was emerging last year, and I think it's his third year.
Right? Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's his third year now. Wow,
I think he'll be even better this season. That's a good one. My sleeper wide receiver is Hollywood Brown.
It's a good one.
Hollywood Brown picked Kansas City for a reason, right? And I understand they have Xavier Worthy there. We'll see what happens with the Rashee Rice situation. Travis Kelce's a huge part of the passing game. But I just think what Hollywood Brown is as a player, now you give him Patrick Mahomes, no disrespect to Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, but the best quarterback he's ever played with.
Best quarterback most players have ever played with.
I think Hollywood's been great in the past, and he'll be even better this year.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I definitely think he chose that because, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are going to make me look great.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's knock this off with tight ends. Let's finish this tight ends. Who's your top guy?
Top guy, tight end is I'm gonna go with. I know this sexy pick is kind of Laporta.
Yeah.
I'm a big consistency guy. I'm just gonna go Travis Kelce again.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah. He's got this podcast. You should give it a listen.
Who's his girlfriend?
Yeah. I just think he's consistent. You draft Travis Kelce. I'm not drafting Travis Kelce probably in the top 2 rounds. Like he typically kind of goes in that beginning of the second, middle of the second. If I can get him in the third, I'm doing cartwheels. So I would take Travis Kelce first.
I like sexy picks, so I'm going Sam Laporta here.
Yeah,
Sam Laporta.
He's pretty much the unanimous number one.
Yeah, he strikes me just the rookie year he had. Building on that, he's a wide receiver playing tight end. I'm real high on Laporta going in this year.
Yeah, and Detroit's got something cooking too, so that definitely adds to it.
Who's your breakout?
Breakout. All right, I'm gonna go. He's a rookie. I'm going with Brock Bowers.
I like it.
I think he's projected kind of middle of the pack. I think ESPN, he comes in around 13th. But he's a guy I could fully see eclipsing a Dallas Goedert, a Jake Ferguson, a Kyle Pitts, and a David Njoku. So I'm going to go with, kind of the wide receiver playing tight end here as well with the rook. I'm going to go Brock Bowers.
I was high on him in the draft. I can't argue with that. My breakout, I see there's a conversation in the chat about whether I believe in all the products that we talk about. Mm-hmm. I will say this is one product that I talk about that I totally believe in, and that is Kyle Pitts. Okay, I have talked about Kyle Pitts.
Hometown bias.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts had.
I saw him play in high school once too.
Yes,
he was a freak.
He was awesome. Kyle Pitts. Look, he was a 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie. He
kind of gets a little overhated on now, don't you think?
Exactly. Yeah. With Desmond Ridder, there's a significant quarterback upgrade there.
Just a bit.
You can say what you want about Kirk Cousins. He
loves tight ends too.
Yeah, You saw the year T.J. Hawkinson had last year with him. I think Kyle Pitts is going to have a monster year. I was considering Dalton Kincaid here as essentially Buffalo's number 1 receiver, but I think Kyle Pitts has the type of year that we've all expected when he was a top 5 pick.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that a lot. Third is he his third year as well?
Fourth year for him.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a year off on my year drafted. Yeah, I mean, it's time for Kyle Pitts. I think if he's going to become that top 5 guy, this is the year to do it with Kirk Cousins there. That's a tremendous upgrade for him.
I think for the sleeper, you and I are on the same wavelength because we were working on the pronunciation earlier. Right? So
if you know me, I butcher some names sometimes.
I'm guilty as charged there as well.
All right, good. I feel like Bo's pretty good at the name thing.
Yeah. Bo's good at a lot of things, but especially pronunciation.
Yeah, I feel like is he in the mirror at home, just like
I could see that.
Yeah, practicing for an hour.
Or he might just say it and just say it with such confidence that you're like, oh, he's right.
Well,
so,
he seems
Yes,
confident.
exactly. Yeah.
All right, so we're both going with our sleeper of Chig Okonkwo.
Chig Okonkwo. Well
did I do it?
You did.
All
I believe
right.
so. I mean, if you didn't, I'm not the one to correct you. Okay. But yeah. Give me your 15 seconds on Chig.
He's kind of coming in around like just prior to 20th in the tight end rankings. Tennessee, I feel like, is a team that relies on the tight end a little bit. He shows some athleticism and big playability. I think they're going to lean on him a little bit more this year. So I think he can eclipse like that 19th rank and get up into that 10 to 15 range. And if things go really well, maybe even, give the top 10 a run.
Yeah, well said. He was a 50-catch guy. I thought there was a chance they would take Brock Powers early on. They did not. So he's kind of uncontested there at tight end. I like him this year.
Yeah, he's a fun one fantasy-wise.
And you're a void at tight end.
I mean, I don't know, like Taysom Hill.
I would say so.
I mean, he's a top 20 tight end, according to I have no interest.
Sure.
None, less than any. I see Taysom Hill on my roster, and I kind of vomit and dry heave a little bit. So, to me, I'm just out.
I'm going George Kittle. He's like a boomer bust player. I really like the player, but there's just a lot of options there, and there's going to be weeks when he has 120 yards. There's going to be weeks when he has 20 yards. I guess I'm just looking kind of for less variance, more kind of consistency from that position. If he was in a different situation or with less talented receivers around him, I think he's shown he can be like one of the top 5, top 3 tight ends in the league. But as it stands now, I think he's more in that 6 to 10 range. And that's why I'm not viewing him the way the market is. Yeah.
Another guy I would throw in there, too, just because I've been burned by him, I feel like every year he's been in the league, is Pat Freiermuth.
Okay.
Talented guy, but, I don't know. You're
not buying the Steelers? Russell Wilson? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm out. I'm out on Freiermuth, right? Freiermuth?
I know how to spell it.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 10 plus months, almost 11 months now. I can't keep, in my former life, I could say I know how to spell it. My job now is to say it. So I need to be able to say it. I think it's Freiermuth. But
Freiermuth? Okay.
I don't feel confident enough to correct you on that.
I'll go with you on that one.
Before we wrap up here, any last minute fantasy thoughts that you want to get to the audience?
I think wide receiver, just if you invest heavy, the way fantasy football has shifted the past couple of years, I almost avoid running. I go one running back in the first 5 rounds that I feel strong about. I get that, and then I just go wide receiver heavy. Yeah. I kind of go nuts with the wide receiver now, especially with the flex position. I don't know if you do flexes in yours. You can never have too many wide receivers. With injuries, I like to have now in modern fantasy football 5 to 6 guys I feel good about. So that's my philosophy, right or wrong. I go super. Get yourself a quarterback. Tight end I always wait on, and I feel like it burns me. But just pump wide receivers onto your team.
And any kickers you recommend?
It's funny. Most of my leagues have gotten away from kickers. Okay, we're all just like, what's the point? This is so dumb. So I'm anti-kicker. Yeah.
Okay.
How about you? Are you pro kicker?
Yeah, I'm pro kicker because it provides a little strategy there, and if you can find the right kicker. Actually, I saw a chat yesterday in the Football Almanac. It was a good number that the Eagles actually had the most. They were like teams kicked the most field goal or had the most successful field goals against them in the league. The teams only missed 2 field goals and had 1 block of anyone. It was like plus 10.6 points over expected. So it could actually favor the Eagles if teams start missing field goals a little more. It's the Football Outside, or it's the Football Almanac from FTN.
Cyrus is on your side. He says it's Freiermuth.
Freiermuth. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I finally got one right.
Thank you, Cyrus.
This was
a nice little role reversal for you, Yeah.
I
got to butcher the name. You got it right.
I thought the role reversal was me sitting in the host seat. I look forward to next time being in the co-host seat with you. But tomorrow in Jamie's seat is going to be Devin Jackson from the Inquirer. We are going to be going through the 2025 NFL draft. You can check
wow.
out. Yeah, so we're gonna give you some names and kind of give an appetizer for that show. When you wake up tomorrow on allphly.com, you will see a 3-round Eagles mock draft.
Wow.
2025 3-round Eagles mock draft. Just trying to keep Vince happy in there. Vince has been asking me for that since the draft. But I'm looking forward to kind of talking about the players that I like in next year's draft, although kickers will not be included in that conversation.
Give me a little teaser right here. Who's somebody that Zach Berman is high on next year?
My favorite player next year's draft, like not even, I mean, I'm not saying like the rankings,
Sure.
just the most fun player for me is Harold Perkins from LSU. Harold Perkins from LSU. I know this is going to sound really bold to say it, but it's almost Micah Parsons-esque. And what I mean by that is LSU has him playing as an off-ball linebacker, but this is someone who, like, if you put him on the edge in the NFL, he is just going to be he's going to be crazy to deal with. He is awesome player. He's going to be top half of the draft as an off-ball linebacker, but similar to Micah Parsons.
What did Parsons go, 12th or 11th, something like that?
He went
somewhere in that range.
Yeah, he
right?
went in that range.
I was yelling for the Eagles to take him.
And so I think that Perkins is going to be someone who, unless teams are drafting him as an edge rusher in the middle of his rookie year, people are going to be like, why weren't we higher on this guy?
Parsons went 12th, and I think that same conversation happened about him.
Exactly, because
might be the best player in this draft. Why did we not spend a higher capital on him?
So that's how I view Harold Perkins. We'll be talking about Harold Perkins and more tomorrow with Devin Jackson. I appreciate Jamie sitting in today.
Thanks for having me.
Julia, as always, was awesome. If Bo was here, Bo would say, as always, we love you. I will say, we'll do better tomorrow. Thank you for watching.
We all silly like the mayor.